Hey guys, it's Tim from Magyar Arcade back with another music discography review. For this video, we'll be exploring the one band I've probably had the most love-hate relationship throughout the years. Today's subject is the band Slipknot. Once again, I'll skip the intro since almost everybody knows who they are. They're the biggest metal act since Metallica, and even taken a similar route in both their career and sound. But without further ado, let's get straight to the countdown. Starting off our countdown at our bottom spot, we have Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. Slipknot's third studio album, released in 2004. I know a lot of you are going to be upset with this, as this was very well received by a lot of fans and critics alike, and that for many people, depending on how old they are, this was their introduction to Slipknot. Being a fan from the beginning and hearing what came before this record, and then listening to Volume 3, was quite possibly one of the biggest disappointments of not just my teen years, but in my life in general. I remember hearing Duality for the first time thinking, well, this isn't bad for the radio-friendly single, only to find out that the whole fucking album was gonna sound like that. Prelude 3.0 is an interesting opener. It's got this sort of edgy, dark lounge bar vibe to it, and at the end I'm thinking, okay, now it's about to get heavy. But it doesn't. Tracks like The Blister Exists and 3-0 sound like a watered-down, neutered, and castrated version of Sevendust. No disrespect to them, they're great. Then you have acoustic ballads like Circle and Vermilion Part 2, with the latter containing vocal harmonies along the line of a Boyz II Men record. No disrespect to them either. Then you have songs like Welcome and Pulse of the Maggots that are supposed to be the quote-unquote barn burners of the record, and are both weak as fuck. Did I mention Corey Taylor's screams and growls sound like shit on this album? Because even he would agree that he doesn't like how his vocals sounded in the final mix. The only decent songs on here are Vermilion Part 1 and Before I Forget, which just happens to be the other singles off this record. Closing track Danger Keep Away is a neat experimental closer in the vein of classic rockers like, say, Eric Clapton, but at this point is already too little too late. Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses, or The Sellout Verses as I like to refer it, is hands down my least favorite record of all time. But because it gave Slipknot arguably two of its most well-known songs, I have to give this an extremely generous 2 out of 5. At number 6, we have Point 5, The Grey Chapter, Slipknot's 5th studio album released in 2014. This record isn't terrible by any means, but it's definitely one of the band's more forgettable LPs. To be fair, you kinda have to give them a mulligan for this one after everything that happened over the previous 4 years. Bassist Paul Gray, hence the name, tragically passed away in 2010, and drummer the late Joey Jordison was forced to resign from the band due to his then private battle with a form of multiple sclerosis. The band would recruit Alex Feedman Venturella and Jay Weinberg respectively as their new rhythm section, while keeping their identities a secret for the majority of the album cycle. The opener 19 sets the gloomy, morbid vibe of the album before breaking into the ultra-heavy Sarcastrophe, which was a major throwback to their earlier material, along with other songs like Nomadic and The Negative One. They even venture into more thrash-like territory with songs like AOV and Leech, which both unfortunately missed the mark. The one that kills the least might just be one of their worst songs they've ever written and should have been on a Stone Sour album. Custer had the potential to be a total banger, but suffers from lazy and immature lyrics. However, the album finishes off strong with If Rain Is What You Want, which is a solid closer. The Grey Chapter sadly is the result of a band having to pick up the pieces from tragedy and not yet being able to work out the kinks of a new lineup, which gives it the low rating of a 2 out of 5. At number 5, we have the new album, The End So Far. Released just this year in 2022, it's definitely Slipknot's most experimental release to date. The album begins with a curveball in the form of Adderall, which sounds like a 70s prog rock tune in the style of the likes of Pink Floyd, before giving ways to singles The Dying Song, The Chapeltown Rag, and Yen, which are the more traditional Slipknot tracks. My favorite tracks are probably Hive Mind, Heirloom, and the closer finale. There's not really a bad track on here, besides maybe Acidic, which was described by one of the band members as an ultra-heavy blues song that just doesn't click with me personally. The End So Far is a solid effort, however, there's nothing really that knocks my socks off either. 3 out of 5. At number 4, appropriately enough, is Slipknot's 4th studio album, All Hope Is Gone. Released in 2008, I was surprisingly impressed by this album. It really renewed my faith in the band after the huge disappointment that was Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses, and I'm glad that fellow YouTuber Metal Trenches agrees with me in saying that this record is extremely underrated. A lot of people say that this is Slipknot's worst album and all, but I beg to differ. While it may not have held up over the years, and it's by no means a classic, it's both heavy and melodic, and even gave the band one of its biggest hits in the form of Psychosocial. The band channels their inner Slayer with Gematria. Sulfur is an amazing song, as is Butcher's Hook, Gehenna, This Cold Black, and Wherein Lies Continue. The record, however, loses major points for the song Snuff, which I think we can all agree has no business being on a Slipknot album, and should have been a Stone Sour song instead. However, the album does finish strong with the closing title track. All Hope Is Gone, or as I like to refer it to, All Hope Is Renewed, gets a 3 out of 5. At number 3 we have We Are Not Your Kind. Released in 2019, this is easily Slipknot's best album since our number 2 pick, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, this record has something for everybody. It's heavy enough to please the old school fans and melodic enough to please the newer fans. I found myself headbanging and raging to the majority of the songs on here, from the first single, Unsainted, all the way to Soil Weight Birth. Other singles, Birth of the Cruel and Nero Fuerte, are great too, as well as the ultra-heavy Critical Darling, but my personal favorite tracks are Red Flag and Orphan, which are classic Slipknot at its finest, and even a more experimental track like Spiders is great too. There is a little bit of filler in the form of songs like A Liar's Funeral and My Pain, as well as interludes like Death Because of Death and What's Next. Still, We Are Not Your Kind is a great album, 4 out of 5. At number 2 we have Iowa, Slipknot's sophomore effort released in 2001. After the monumental success that was their debut album, a lot of pressure was on the band to deliver a worthy follow-up, and that's exactly what they did with Iowa. They took what already worked previously and just turned it up to 11. People Equal Shit and The Heretic Anthem are 2 of Slipknot's greatest songs, and to this day are setlist staples. You have so many other bangers on here like Disaster Piece, My Plague, which was even featured on the Resident Evil film soundtrack. Even the deep cuts like Everything Ends, Gently, The Shape, Skin Ticket, and New Abortion are all amazing. I Am Hated even features a jab at Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit for disrespecting their fan base. There's really not a dull moment on Iowa. It gets a 5 out of 5. And finally at number 1 is none other than the self-titled debut album. Released in 1999, Slipknot took the world by storm with this record. Touring with Cold Chamber and being a surprise hit on the second stage of Ozfest only further helped the band to go double platinum status. As for the record, it's sheer perfection. Sick and Eyeless both grab you by the balls. Wait and Bleed is a perfect single. Surfacing is a crushing anthem, Spit It Out is a setlist staple, deep cuts like Tattered and Torn, Frail and Nursery and Liberate are all great, Prosthetics is haunting and satisfying, No Life, Deluded, Only One, and the closer Scissors. This record is an absolute classic and a benchmark that will never be topped. 5 out of 5. Well guys, that's every Slipknot album so far. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Later.